Hey, what's up, cats and kittens? And shout out to all my cerebralites. It's me, the Cerebral Diva. It is Friday, April 7th, 2017. The weekend's here. Let's hope it will not be our last weekend based on what's happening in the world. But I have to tell you guys, I'm cautiously optimistic about the world that we live in right now. So I'm just getting back from the gym. I had a fantastic workout. I did about 45 minutes on the elliptical. Then I turned around and did probably about another 35 minutes on the treadmill for a cumulative total of about 80 minutes. Yeah. So I feel like I really put in work this morning. But I'm not here to talk about fitness. I'm here to talk about what's happening in the world right now. In particular, the missile strikes that are happening in Syria under the authority of Donald Trump. Um, Now, I kind of want to title this video Necessary or Calculated Distraction. Now, before I talk about them being, these airstrikes being necessary or calculated distraction, let me touch on something that might seem quasi-supportive of Donald Trump. And I want to preface what I'm about to say by saying I am in no way stretch of the imagination a Donald Trump fan. I am in no way, shape, or form supportive of the ideologies of Donald Trump. And but in the interest of fairness, you know, I have to sometimes put my beliefs, my ideology aside and look at things from the perspective of, because I feel like that's what's lacking in our world today. It's understanding, it's empathy, it's compassion. We all sort of have tunnel vision. We see things the way that we see them, but we're so uncomfortable stepping outside of the way that we see things that sometimes our unwillingness to step in another person's shoes makes us just as bad as the people that we're being critical of. So while I was on the treadmill this morning, I started thinking about these airstrikes and why, even though I'm terrified of the outcome of these airstrikes, why it may actually be necessary to send this sort of message to the world. You know, we live in a world where we have leaders like Vladimir Putin, Kim Jong-un, and the world is a pretty unstable place right now. Oh, and Donald Trump. let me not leave him out of that trifecta. Um, so the world is pretty unstable, and sometimes logic can't get through to crazy. You know, Obama was very logical. He's even keeled. He's intelligent. He's compassionate. He's empathetic. You know, he's diplomatic. You know, he's all the things that you want a leader to be in a world where you're dealing with reasonable and rational leaders. That's not the world we live in right now. We're living in a world where people have elected madmen, or madmen have elected themselves to positions of power. So I started thinking, right, let's say hypothetically you're a parent and you have a child who's in school and this child is being bullied. And he comes home to you and he says, Mommy, Peter's bullying me. Peter's going to be our bully for this story, right? Peter's bullying me. And you say, well, sweetheart, you just ignore Peter. You know, wherever you see Peter, you go the opposite way, right? Your child comes home the next day and he has a black eye. And you say, my gosh, what happened? And you know, well, Peter, Peter caught me and he beat me up. And you say, well, go talk to the principal tomorrow. The child goes to talk to the principal tomorrow, comes back home the following day. Now his nose is bloodied. You say, oh my gosh, what happened? It's that goddamn Peter once again. So this time, as a parent, you say, you know what? I'm going to take matters into my own hand and marching you right over to Peter's parents' house. We're going to have a sit down and we're going to get this settled once and for all. You go over to Peter's parents' house. You guys hold a summit and you talk about, sanctions and resolutions and all the things that you can do to get Peter to comply and do what he's supposed to do. Everyone signs off on the treaty, and things go back to normal for a little while. And one day Peter decides it's boring, being obligated to this treaty, and he attacks your son once again, and he pummels your son, and your son comes home, and you say, what happened? And he says, well, Peter's at it again. And then you say to your son, the next time he touches you, you kick his ass. That's the point that I think that we're at in the world, because sanctions and treaties and all of these sort of soft-handed approaches towards these manic dictators don't seem to really be having an impression on them. And so even though I'm a person who believes in diplomacy and a person who believes in peaceful resolutions, I can understand why some people might want a leader who is proactive as opposed to being reactive. Why some people who would want a leader who is prone to posturing and sort of poking his chest out to let people know, I am not a leader that you want to try. And Donald Trump, being the war dodger that he is, while he's quick to sort of initiate military action, and I disagree with that, I do understand why some people are buying into that ideology, because the world that we live in is a very crazy world. Now, granted, some of these people who have issues with America, they pretty much are entitled to have those issues with America based on the things that we've done abroad. But that's a whole other story, so I don't want to really go off on that tangent. I just want to say that even though I don't support Donald Trump, even though I'm not okay with these airstrikes necessarily, I'm sort of, I think that sometimes you need the crazy to match the crazy, crazy cancels out crazy. So it's like two negatives are a positive. So you need the crazy of Donald Trump to get these leaders to understand that, the days of the amiable Obama are gone. You have a leader who is not afraid to push the red button. And while I don't want that to happen, while I'm not in support of that, maybe that will be a deterrent to some of these people who keep trying to send these messages, that we're not afraid to send messages of our own. Because we've tried sanctions, we've tried treaties, we've tried, diplomacy, we've tried a lot of different nonviolent resolutions to bring about change, and none of those things are working. So at some point, you have to step back and say, okay, well, we're going to have to try things a different way. So that's really my feelings about the missile strike. So moving on, what I want to say about these missile strikes and the timing of these missile strikes, and the reason why I say necessary or calculated distraction, is the fact that the Neil Gorsuch Supreme Court nomination was filibustered by the Democrats. We still have all of this stuff happening in terms of the Russian investigation, Susan Rice, and what have you. And if Donald Trump is a master at one thing, it's hijacking the narrative. When things get hot, when all of the attention is laser focused on Donald Trump, he's very good at finding a way to shake things up and switch the conversation to something completely different from what we were talking about just a day or two ago. And that's why I'm a little cynical about him striking Syria, because this is the same man who signed an executive order preventing refugees from coming into this country, seeking refuge, seeking safety. But suddenly he has a crisis of conscience. Now he's, Captain Save a Syrian, who wants to go out there and be a champion for the people, while his whole platform was one that was based on America first and being non-interventionist and making sure that we protected ourselves, and that it wasn't our job to go out here and police the world. So to attack Syria is really, or not necessarily Syria, to attack the Assad regime is really sort of counterintuitive to his platform, to the message that he's been touting for the last couple of years while he was running. So I don't know, you guys. I'm really curious to hear what your thoughts are. I know people will probably get mad at me for being quasi-supportive of Donald Trump, and that's fine. but I'm more interested to hear what you have to say. So, anyhow, you guys, follow me across all social media platforms. That's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, Cerebral Diva on all of those platforms. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, and share. I love to hear comments, but keep them respectful. I'm not averse to an exchange as long as it's one that is intelligent and not necessarily one that is incendiary. So, yes, remember to leave your comments, like, comment, subscribe, share, and as always, in closing, remember to live better, love harder, and think smarter. It's me, the Cerebral Diva. Blah, 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 blah. I'll talk to you guys later. Have a great weekend, and yeah, I'll see you Monday.